All right, UPSC aspirants, get ready. It's February 14th, 2025, and we're back with another deep dive into current affairs that could help you ace that exam. This is part one, so grab your notes and let's jump right in.
And remember, we're going beyond just the headlines, right? We'll be breaking down the news, understanding the why behind the what, so you can really connect the dots. Ready to tackle some UPSC-level questions.
Exactly. Now, some topics today might be familiar. Think of it as a quick revision, but we've also got some brand new developments, so keep your highlighters handy. Let's kick things off by talking about India's defense strategy. You know how India's been phasing out those old Russian aircraft? Well, they're actually doubling down on the replacements.
Interesting, right? India is thinking about buying 6 more of those P-8I long-range maritime patrol aircraft from the U.S. They're modified versions of what the U.S. Navy uses, the P-8A Poseidon, specifically designed for India's needs.
Wait, 6 more? They already have a bunch of those, don't they? What's the reason for such a big purchase?
Well, it's all about strengthening India's presence in the Indian Ocean. Think about it. We've got increasing Chinese naval activity, potential threats in the region. These aircraft are a statement. They've got advanced sensors, can cover huge distances, and it's a clear signal that India is serious about maritime security.
Makes sense. It's not just about buying new toys, it's a strategic move. Okay, let's switch gears to something that always comes up in the UPSC exam, international organizations, and specifically the Arab League.
Ah, yes, the Arab League, a powerful group of nations with a ton of influence in the Middle East and beyond. Formed back in 1945, started with just 6 members: Egypt, Iraq, Cisjordan, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Syria, and it's only grown from there.
I remember the basics, but what details should we focus on for the exam?
Think about India's role. We have observer status in the Arab League. Sounds like a small thing, but it reflects our strategic interests in the region. Access to energy resources, diplomatic ties, countering terrorism. It's all connected to our engagement with the Arab League.
So understanding those connections is key. Got it. Now let's bring it back home and talk about something that's guaranteed to be on the UPSC exam, the Indian polity. Specifically, a key committee in the Parliament, the Public Accounts Committee, the PAC.
The PAC has been all over the news lately, especially with their directive to the government about those toll tax rules on national highways. But it's important to understand their larger role. They audit the government's spending, make sure everything's being spent how it was approved by Parliament.
Like a watchdog for the country's finances, keeping everything honest. But the PAC wasn't always like this was it. It's changed over the years.
Definitely. It goes all the way back to 1921, but it became a real parliamentary committee under the Speaker's control in 1950. And here's something interesting that the UPSC loves to test. Since 1967, the chairperson of the PAC has traditionally been from the opposition party.
Interesting. So it's not just about auditing, it's about checks and balances within the government.
Exactly. The way the PAC is structured and how it functions, they're a big part of India's parliamentary system. And getting those nuances is vital for the UPSC exam. All right, let's change gears again and talk about a health issue that's been in the news lately, Mpox.
Mpox, right. You could be called monkeypox. I remember reading about it, but to be honest, I'm a little fuzzy on the details. What are the key things we need to know for the exam?
Well, it's a viral illness, a zoonotic, meaning it spreads from animals to humans. Symptoms can be fever, headache, muscle aches, and you get a pretty distinct rash. It spreads through close contact with infected animals or people or even contaminated materials.
So it's not just about recognizing the symptoms, but understanding how it spreads.
Right, and for the UPSC, the bigger picture is key. Think about the implications for public health, the potential impact on different communities, and how the government responds to the outbreak. That's the kind of thinking that can really make you stand out in the exam.
Okay, that's helpful. Now for something totally different. This next topic is a mix of science and history, and honestly just blows my mind. We're talking about Einstein rings.
Einstein rings. Picture this. A ring of light, millions of light years away, bending around a massive galaxy. It's a phenomenon that Einstein predicted with his theory of general relativity, gravity actually bending light itself.
Hold on. We're literally seeing light being warped by gravity. That's wild.
It is, and recently the European Space Agency's Euclid telescope found an amazing Einstein ring around a galaxy 590 million light years away. It's not just a cool picture, though. It actually proves Einstein's theories and shows just how powerful modern telescopes are.
Wow. Okay. So from a UPSC point of view, we should think about this in terms of advancements in space exploration and our understanding of the universe. But how likely is it that this particular discovery will show up on the exam?
It's hard to say. The UPSC is known for being unpredictable. But what's important is understanding the concepts behind it. Grasping gravitational lensing and what it means for cosmology, those are the takeaways that might be valuable. All right, let's get back down to earth for a bit and talk about art and culture, specifically a 4,000-year-old art form that's been in the news lately.
You mean Dokra art. I saw that. The French president got a piece from our prime minister. I'll admit I'd never even heard of Dokra art before that.
It's really fascinating. Dokra is a metal casting technique practiced by tribal artisans in eastern India. And what makes it so special is each piece is made by hand. No two are exactly the same, and they use this incredible lost wax method.
Lost wax method. I remember reading about that. They make a model out of beeswax, cover it with clay to make a mold, then pour in molten metal. The wax melts away, leaving behind this super detailed metal sculpture. It sounds so delicate and complicated.
It really is. And for UPSC, think about the bigger picture, the effort to preserve traditional crafts, the cultural significance of Dokra art, the role of tribal communities in Indian art history. These are all angles that could come up in the exam.
I'm taking notes. Now, before we wrap up part 1, let's do a quick rundown of some other news that could be relevant for the UPSC exam. Just some quick hits.
Sure, there's a new study out about the Fulani community, one of Africa's largest pastoral groups. Their history actually dates back to the Green Sahara period, thousands of years ago.
Wow, that's going way back. What else?
There's this new platform called MITRA, stands for Mutual Fund Investment Tracing and Retrieval Assistant. It's designed to help people track down those inactive or unclaimed mutual fund investments. You know, the ones you might have forgotten about.
That's actually pretty useful. I know I've lost in financial documents before.
And lastly, a bit of a sobering reminder of the environmental issues we're facing. Sections of the Hindon River have actually been declared dead, unfit even for bathing, because of heavy industrial waste.
It's a sad reminder that economic development has to go hand in hand with protecting the environment. All right, that wraps up part 1 of our Current Affairs Deep Dive for February 14th, 2025. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to stay updated, and share this with your fellow UPSC aspirants.
And definitely tune in for part 2, where we'll be looking at even more important topics that could make all the difference in your UPSC journey. See you there.
So until next time, happy studying.
Welcome back, UPSC aspirants. We're diving right back into our current affairs analysis for February 14th, 2025. I hope you're all warmed up from part 1 because we're about to unpack some more crucial topics that could really be game changers for your exam prep.
You know, the UPSC is known for throwing those unexpected curveballs, testing our knowledge on things we might not even consider important. But that's why we do these deep dives, right? To make sure you're ready for anything they throw at you.
Absolutely. It's not about rote memorization. It's about understanding those nuances, connecting the dots, and seeing that bigger picture. And that's exactly what we're doing today. So let's get back to business.
Let's do it. In part 1, we talked about India's defense deals, specifically that P-8I aircraft purchase. But there's another side to India's defense strategy that's just as important: indigenous technology. And there's some exciting news on that front.
You're talking about Sṛjanam, right? India's very first indigenously developed automated biomedical waste treatment plant. It was just inaugurated at AIIMS, New Delhi, and it's a pretty big deal.
Okay, I admit biomedical waste treatment plant doesn't exactly sound thrilling. But why is this significant for the UPSC exam? Help me connect the dots.
Think about it. Healthcare infrastructure, technological advancements, Make in India, those are all hot topics for UPSC. This plant was developed by CSIR and IEAST, and it shows India's growing capabilities in handling hazardous medical waste, all without relying on those expensive, energy-intensive incinerators.
I see. So it's not just about waste management. It's about self-reliance and innovation in a really critical sector.
Exactly, and it ticks so many boxes for UPSC science and technology, healthcare, government initiatives. Plus, it's a great example to use in your answers during the exam. Now, speaking of important sectors, let's shift our focus to the economy, specifically mutual funds. They've become a really popular investment option, and there's a new initiative you should know about, the MITRA platform.
MITRA, that sounds familiar. Didn't we touch upon that in part 1?
We did mention it briefly, but it's worth taking a deep dive. MITRA stands for Mutual Fund Investment Tracing and Retrieval Assistant, and it's a game changer for investors who have lost track of their mutual fund holdings. Let's be honest, we've all been there, haven't we? Misplaced documents, outdated contact info, it happens.
Oh, absolutely. I've had my fair share of frantic searches for those elusive investment papers. How does MITRA solve this?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. It was developed by the Registrar and Transfer Agents, RTAs, and it lets investors search a huge database of inactive and unclaimed mutual fund folios. You can find those forgotten investments, consolidate them, and even claim what's rightfully yours. It's all about giving more power to investors and streamlining the process.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. So for the UPSC exam, we should be thinking about this in terms of initiatives that are trying to make the financial sector more accessible and investor-friendly.
Exactly. It's about understanding the government's efforts to improve financial inclusion and investor protection. These are themes that come up all the time in the UPSC exam, so keep those connections in mind. Now let's move to a topic that's often overlooked but incredibly important: the environment. We briefly mentioned the pollution of the Hindon River in Part 1, but this issue goes way beyond just one river.
You're right. It's a real wake-up call about the environmental challenges we face, especially in a rapidly developing nation like India. And it's honestly disheartening to see such disregard for our natural resources.
I understand your concern. And for the UPSC exam, it's not enough to just be aware of the problem. You need to understand what causes the pollution, the impact it has on ecosystems and human health, and the various initiatives that are being implemented to tackle these issues.
It's all about connecting the dots, right? Seeing how environmental degradation is linked to economic development and how we can find sustainable solutions.
Exactly. The UPSC wants to see that you can think critically, analyze complex issues from multiple perspectives. All right, let's take a break from these heavy topics and explore something a bit lighter. We discussed Dokra art in the previous segment, but there's another fascinating art form I want to tell you about.
Oh, I'm all ears. I love discovering new art forms, especially those that have a rich history and cultural significance. What is it?
Remember when we were talking about the Fulani community and their ancient roots in Part 1? Well, their artistic talents are just as remarkable. They're known for taking everyday objects and adorning them with these really intricate patterns and designs, reflecting their deep connection to their heritage. Think beautifully decorated milk bowls handcrafted with such precision and care.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's not just decorative art, it's about cultural expression and a whole way of life.
Precisely. It's a reminder that you can find art in the most unexpected places, and it's a testament to the diversity and richness of African cultures.
Absolutely. And thinking about the UPSC exam, it's a fantastic example of how art can reflect social structures, livelihoods, and cultural values. We can connect this to themes like cultural anthropology, the impact of globalization and preserving indigenous traditions.
Yale said, connecting those dots is what will make you stand out in the exam.
This has been such an insightful session. We've covered so much ground already. What's next on our agenda? And we're back, UPSC Warriors. This is the final stretch of our current affairs deep dive for February 14th, 2025. Are you ready to tackle these last few crucial topics, the ones that could really boost your score?
Absolutely. Don't forget, the UPSC exam isn't just about knowing the headlines. It's about really getting those nuances, analyzing what's important, and making those connections. And that's exactly our focus for this last part.
Let's get to it then. In part 2, we talked about those Einstein rings and how the Euclid telescope found a stunning 1 millions of light years away. But there's been another discovery in space that's just as amazing.
You're talking about the biggest, most complete Einstein ring ever seen, right? It's called Gao-Clis 022058, and wow, it's a sight to behold.
Yes, I read about it and I was hooked immediately. But what makes this discovery so important? We already know these Einstein rings exist, so what's the big deal with this one?
Well, this particular one is way out there in the constellation Fornax, and it's formed by light from a emitting galaxy. But this light is being bent into an almost perfect circle. And what's bending it? The crazy strong gravity of a galaxy cluster in front of it. It's like a giant cosmic magnifying glass, helping us see things that would normally be invisible.
So it's not just about proving Einstein's theory again. It's about opening up whole new ways to observe and discover things out there.
Exactly. It shows us the power of this gravitational lensing and how far we've come in astronomy. For the UPSC, this kind of discovery highlights how scientific knowledge is always changing and how important it is to keep up with those breakthroughs that challenge our understanding of the universe. All right, let's bring things back down to Earth. And unfortunately, it's not with good news. We've talked about the Hindon River pollution a couple of times now, but I think it's worth another look, given how serious it is.
You're right, it's a sad situation, and it's crucial to understand just how wide-reaching the impacts are. All that industrial waste being dumped hasn't just hurt the fish and plants, it's also hurting the people who rely on the river for fishing for their crops.
It's a stark reminder that progress often comes with a price, and it's usually those most vulnerable communities that end up paying for it when the environment gets damaged.
It's a stark reminder that progress often comes with a price, and it's usually those most vulnerable communities that end up paying for it when the environment gets damaged.
Absolutely. And for the UPSC, think about how these things are all linked: environmental pollution, lack of water, public health issues, and how we can develop sustainably. These are all connected themes that often come up in the exam.
Okay, let's end on a bit of a brighter note. We've talked a lot about India today, but there's another country whose history and culture are closely tied to ours: Afghanistan.
And there's been a really fascinating archaeological discovery in Afghanistan. It sheds light on a not-so-well-known ancient civilization, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom. They found this huge city over 2,000 years old, temples, palaces, a massive wall. It's incredible.
Well, that's amazing. What makes this discovery so important, especially for someone prepping for the UPSC exam?
Well, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom was this unique mix of Greek and Persian influences, and this discovery is changing how we see this civilization and how they connected with other cultures. For the UPSC, it reminds us how important it is to understand those historical and cultural links between different regions and how they've shaped our world today.
It's incredible to think about those ancient civilizations thriving and interacting, leaving behind pieces of their world that we're still discovering centuries later.
It really is, and it reminds us that history is always being rewritten as we find new things. It's important to stay curious and be open to new perspectives.
That brings us to the end of our Current Affairs deep dive for February 14th, 2025. We've covered so much today, from the mysteries of space to the secrets of ancient civilizations, from the challenges facing our environment to breakthroughs in science and technology.
Remember, all this information we've gone over in these deep dives, it's all super valuable for your UPSC journey. It's not just about memorizing the facts, it's about getting that context, analyzing what things mean, and making those connections to see the big picture.
If you found this deep dive helpful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more updates, and share this with all your fellow UPSC aspirants. Until next time, happy studying and best of luck with your preparations.